Hi, this is Jordan.
And I'm Bryan, and you're listening to The Quality Varies.
How are your holidays, Bryan?
What's up? My holidays were joyous and happy and free. How are yours?
Oh, we're good. I spent New Year's in my apartment learning software because I definitely put the holidays high on my celebrate. I definitely celebrate holidays heavily.
Well, to be fair, you sound like you partied pretty hard.
Yeah, I am known to get down
Oh yeah,
with the beat.
we're getting all kinds of sound bites from you tonight.
Are you feeling resolute? Are you feeling inspired? Are you feeling like you want to take on the world at the beginning of the new year, Bryan? Do you have any fantastical New Year's resolutions? Do you want to quote unquote get back to the gym?
I feel like I'm being personally attacked.
I don't know what you're talking about, Bryan. I'm only here to support you.
Interesting. Actually, now that you ask, yeah. You used a lot of words there. Some of them I like. Inspired is a good one because inspiration can come from lots of different things.
My super special computer audio software, I clapped right in front of my microphone and it's like, no.
It's not a voice.
Nothing.
It doesn't exist if it's not a human voice.
And yet I don't know. I click a pen a million times during the episode and the mic's just like, "Oh, give it to me."
The song of my people.
Yeah. Yes.
I am loving all these naughty sound bites that you're giving to us. It's
This
just so
is the
much
only
better
way-
with your voice.
This is the only way that I can talk and not feel like coughing.
So you partied pretty hard over the holidays.
Yeah, I did. I live an introvert life, my friend, but sometimes I find myself going into the black hole and I go too long. And so I went a couple days too long of staying inside. So then I got sick. So then I had to stay inside longer against my will and chill out. And man, can I tell you, I forgot how annoying it is to not be able to sleep. I woke up.
Oh man, you poor little baby.
I know. So I don't get sick often, and I woke up having thought like I went to bed. Took me a little bit to fall asleep, and I woke up and I'm like, man, I'm wide awake. I wonder what time it is. And I went to bed at 9, and I woke up and it was 10:30. And I'm like, well,
Oh, that's terrible.
yeah. And so one of the biggest indicators to my family was, I was like, oh, I'm sick. And they're like, how are you doing? I'm like, well, I took NyQuil. And they're like, what? I haven't taken medicine in like 5 years, but I also need to sleep.
Yeah.
So I walked into the store just looking like a hoodlum with a mask on, and I bought 3 boxes of vitamin C powder and the strongest of Dayquil and NyQuil. And the guy is about to ask me how I'm doing, and then he just looks at me, and I'm like, yeah, you don't. My voice does not need to tell you how I'm doing.
Right. You can see it.
But it's going great. I learned a new software, and the new year is kicking off as New Year's usually do in real estate. All of a sudden, people remember their goal that they wanted a house, and they don't have one yet. So, or in the case of Idaho, they remember that they still live in Idaho, and they still get 2 feet of snow a year, and they don't want to deal with that anymore, so they want to move away.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
it's a good time to be an agent.
Well, good. I'm glad to hear that business is good for you.
Yeah. What? How were your holidays?
Lovely.
Oh, I didn't freaking mute.
I heard that.
F.
Yeah. Good. Just all the sound bites from you.
I went to cough and I saw my mic was not blinking as it should have been. And I was like, oh no.
Yeah, my holidays were good. I just find it hilarious that you find it annoying when you can't sleep. Because That's what life as a parent is like.
Oh no,
you just never sleep. So look forward to that. That being said, Christmas morning, one day out of 365 other days, is a great time to wake up early with kids, because they are so happy, and it's amazing. It's magical, and like you spend so much time like thinking about them and getting them gifts, and it's so cool to like get them things that you want to get them and that you think they will like, and then when they open it and they get all excited and they start squealing that ear-piercingly loud screech of delight, you're like smiling through the tears of pain because they're so happy that they like the little Spider-Man motorcycle that you got them. And it's so good. The biggest hit, though, was we got a trampoline for Christmas.
Oh, that's right. I remember you talking about this a little bit.
Yeah, and our next door neighbor actually texted us later in the day. She said that was quite the reaction to a trampoline or something. Like we had to run out back to see what was going on.
Yeah.
And
that's amazing.
Yeah. So we alerted the whole neighborhood to our Christmas morning.
Gift incoming.
Yeah. Yeah, it was great. It was
That's awesome.
All three of them were just screaming as loud as I've ever heard.
I don't think I've ever been in a position where I've been that comfortable with a neighbor. I'm jealous.
That neighbor is our bishop, and so they're awesome people. Their youngest is like a year and a half or 2 years older than our oldest, and we love that kid. He's like the nicest, sweetest buddy for our friends. He's always like giving them little toys, like, hey, I have this toy that I haven't played with in a while. Here, you have it. Or I painted this picture for you, and he just like comes over and gives my kids paintings that he paints for them, and it's like, it's just the most freaking wholesome thing in the planet, and it's great.
We must cherish that child.
Yes, we must cherish that child. It's true. It's true. We love Dylan. Yes.
Are all of your kids... So my nephew is very young.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how old.
You don't know how old your nephew is?
I think he's just under 2, but not in it, like barely at an age you can. He doesn't he likes things,
mm-hmm.
but it's not I don't know if it's like quite there yet where he recognizes that like this is a special time, and like these are Christmas presents. You know, I don't think he recognizes that. Are all of your kids old enough to really have taken on Christmas?
No, the youngest is kind of in that same
okay.
That same category. He like didn't even open his last 2 or 3 presents because he got his train that he liked, and he just like chilling. He made somebody open it, and he was just happy as a clam with his train. And I was like, dude, here's more stuff here, open it. And he was like, no, Dad. So I was like, we were just like, okay, he can go play and everybody else can have Christmas.
That's awesome. Don't you wish that he keeps that attitude in later years, even though he definitely won't?
Yeah, that would be nice. Just get them all one present and then call it good.
Yeah, our family was certainly much better off when we finally just accepted the fact that we don't like the mental energy it takes to get each other presents. And we're willing to take the hit of getting less presents ourselves. Mm-hmm. So we just went down to like basically just a white elephant to each other.
Nice.
Yeah. The time of the year, even when I remember even in middle school, getting to the time of the year where I have family members start asking like, I was in a very blessed household, and, you know, people could give each other gifts. But when I would get the texts that said like, hey, you know, I need your Christmas gift, I'm like, oh, this, just the immediate dread that I would feel. And I'm like, if I don't respond Maybe they think that I died. Because, that's definitely the first thought that a family member would have and definitely not follow up on.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I never liked thinking about trying to send somebody something. And then in later years, once I had money, it's like I bought that thing. Like I have that thing now.
Yeah.
Like you see my bookshelf. Like I obviously
Right.
can't. I'm not a good gift giver. I'm not a good receiver of gifts.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
now the family's on the same page now. Now we're all in it together. It's a good time.
You're all misers together. That's great. That's wonderful.
I consider it a great thing that I live alone now and I don't have to decorate for Christmas. And some of the family members try to give their assistance. I'm like, no, this was on purpose.
Yeah, no, I like it like this.
Yeah, you
This
see that
is
candle over there?
yeah.
If you squint, it might smell like mistletoe.
If you squint, it might smell like
Yes.
mistletoe.
Yes.
If you listen closely,
Actually,
you can taste a Christmas tree.
yeah, exactly. Realistically, it's ocean breeze, and realistically, that's a box over there for me buying myself a gift because I wanted it, and I didn't
Yeah.
realize that it was Christmas time. Brian, I want to jump into today's topic, but we do have a bit of an announcement.
A big announcement. Something that the Instagram follower will have known about for a while now.
Do you want to do a little show and tell with the class? Mostly tell, because this is an audio
Yeah.
format
Here it
media.
is. Here it is, listener. Can you look at it? Oh, look at all the shapes and colors and see it? See? Can you see it?
This will be a video format podcast in the future. I just wanted people to know that it won't
Yeah.
be in the near future, but it will be in the future.
Yeah, we're not there yet. We ain't no Joe Rogan experience yet.
No, most certainly not.
Nah. I am super, super pumped for this, actually. Well, I'm super pumped about this. I'm really excited to deliver the content that you guys want. I ran a like a little survey quiz on Instagram a few weeks ago, and all three of you that responded gave very specific answers on the type of content that you like to hear from us. So I started thinking, why don't we split up the show? And I presented that to Jordan, and he was super into it. So we are happy to announce Homebrew Catastrophe, our D&D and nerdy gamey podcast, will be coming soon to a podcast format near you.
Yes. So the first episode for the new show is going to be coming up on most platforms. Most likely going to be starting on kind of Apple Podcasts and Spotify. It takes a little bit longer for it to show up on other platforms. But then once it does show up, then all new episodes do kind of pop up immediately. Just that first run kind of needs to go through various platforms, filtering systems, and do all that fun stuff. I swear it took us like 9 months to show up on Pandora. It was amazing. And it's going to be D&D, tabletop, video games, anything else nerdy, kind of that culture, news, what's going on in the world. And because of that, all of that content will now no longer be present in the Quality Varies and future episodes here. And so all of the content that we're speaking about here is going to be kind of some of the serious topics that we've gone over.
Mental health, fitness, motorcycles.
Yeah, we hope that the folks that have kind of found and enjoyed some of the episodes there are now able to confidently come and enjoy those without any, fear. I know it's a some of those other discussions that we had, it's a lot if that's not your jig.
Mm-hmm. And we get that, and that's kind of why we wanted to do this, was because we knew that not everybody liked all of the content, and so we thought that this was kind of the easiest split in all the stuff that we want to talk about. And it's really easy to start a podcast when you know what you're doing. So we're just doing another podcast.
And the upload frequency here is not going to change at all. You're still going to catch us every. I just realized the mistake that I made that I now have to go in and correct on the back end. But for the quality varies. For the quality varies, you are still going to see us every other Monday, going up in the morning here, and just the weeks that a quality varies episode is not going up, you're going to be seeing on a different day. You're going to be seeing an episode of Homebrew Catastrophe being uploaded, and so I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm excited, and for me. For us, that means we get to talk more about nerdy stuff, just somewhere a little different.
And that excites us very greatly. You still didn't mute yourself for that one. And now you're muted. The opposite of what you wanted to do.
I know. This is gonna be a beautiful episode.
So good.
I'm gonna get into it, and you're just gonna let me be, and at the end of it all, it's gonna be muted. And then it's just gonna be me coughing, frustrated at the very end of it, and that's the only thing you get.
Yep. It's just going to be a whole lot of me, and then Jordan coughing in between.
Yeah, and I'm trying, instead of saying the yup and then pausing and coughing, I'm muted, and then I cough, and then I mute myself again.
And then I can see Jordan just, flailing his arms and getting really mad at me for talking over him. And maybe I can read his lips and see the first swear words he ever says.
Ooh, that's a conversation for another day. I've been a very profane man.
Oh, did we stumble onto something?
Yeah, did I ever tell you the reason why I don't? Did we ever talk about that?
Maybe.
The reason that I didn't, the reason that I don't swear is because when I did, I live in extremes with everything, and that included profanity, and so I couldn't just use it like a gentleman, so to speak. It was F words every other word. Couldn't construct a meaningful sentence around adults, and this was all the way back in middle school, and I realized I couldn't talk to my friends' parents without being terrified. So I was like, that just doesn't work for me. So in my mind, I was just like, well, stopping is just easier. So The reason I don't swear is because if I ever did again, I probably wouldn't be able to stop.
Yeah, I've made several attempts at cleaning up my language.
Do you want to know the more surprising thing?
Yes, I do.
I'm actually, if there's nobody around, I'm actually still quite a profane person.
Oh yeah, my internal monologue is just filthy.
Yeah, that started back up very unfortunately, probably 2 years ago.
Yeah.
I didn't used to swear at all, but now if I still like outwardly like talking to myself in the car or something or at home. But if there's nobody around, still very profane. But if there's anybody around, then so. How's that for a random bit of info that doesn't have anything to do with the topic of the show? Bryan, what are we talking about today?
We are talking about New Year's resolutions and maybe a different way to think about New Year's resolutions.
I asked you a little bit, but do you actually, are there any intentions that either consciously or not, do these kind of thoughts automatically cross your mind just because it's the beginning of the year? Like, do you think to yourself like, oh, this is a nice time to start this back up, or do thoughts like that ever cross your mind?
I wanted to say no, but they kind of do. Yeah. Growing up, my parents were really big into New Year's resolutions, and so the first Monday of every year, we'd sit down for family home evening, and we'd write out lists of all the things that we wanted to do this year, and things like reading 50 books or reading 1,000 pages those were the kinds of goals that we would set as a kid. But I don't think I ever read all of the books or pages that I had set for myself. and I absolutely lost track of all of the other measurement type resolutions that I set. I think my wife actually told me this year that January 4th is the day where statistically almost everybody gives up on their New Year's resolutions. We were actually talking about that because I was at the gym on January 3rd, and it was an absolute sardine fest. There wasn't even enough space in the gym for me to do my movements, my exercises. There's literally not enough room to move and like exercise in between all the people. I skipped the gym January 4th because I didn't want to deal with that. And then I went back on January 5th and it was back to being a ghost town.
Yep.
So that's kind of sad actually, that people just, I don't know. I see my thoughts are that we just we tend to we want to do all these good things, but we just kind of overload ourselves and we just put too much pressure on ourselves, I think. And so we just kind of buckle under the weight of all that. What do you think?
The gym is, I think, the apex of kind of this phenomenon. And I worked at a gym for almost 6 years, and it was one of the most consistent things to just sit and witness. Folks that were gym rats or just regulars, they would dread the coming of January, because December is a great month if you're a regular. Mm-hmm. Nobody's there. Mm-hmm. But January sucks, and it's fantastic for the salespeople. I do think it's, a lot of gyms that when you're signing up, they may ask you what's your preferred time to work out. Mm-hmm. And I do think it's interesting, you go in and I could see how many people are signed up that have this as their preferred time. If those people actually came, the gym would implode. We wouldn't even be able to hold a fifth of the people that are signed up just for, the 5 a.m. early morning time. And so I always think it's interesting that the gyms, they never tell you can't sign up because they're not too concerned.
Right.
Because a very small percentage of the people that are paying on a monthly basis are actually making use out of the amount that are paying for.
Wow.
And it's a sad thing. And you would watch the thing that we had was, if the people that we saw come in, if they stayed about 3 weeks, then that was very exciting, because the 3-week mark just physically is when you start getting over this is physically painful stage. And the soreness starts to feel a little bit different, and kind of the chemicals in the brain are starting to shift.
Yeah.
If you're still there about the second week of, I think, February, then it's all right, cool. We got ourselves in a potential new regular. But it would just dive during the month of January, seeing all these hyper motivated people. And then it's unfortunate because then they're I want to buy 100 personal training sessions. And it's really? How about 5?
Yeah.
Because as much as I want you to pay for 100 personal training sessions, I also don't want you to call me in June threatening to sue me because you made a bad life decision 6 months prior.
Man, people are great, aren't they?
Yeah. So the $5,000 to spend on personal training, it was a very motivating day for them in January. Mm-hmm. And that's a very unmotivating thing when you all of a sudden would like $5,000 to spend on stuff in June.
Yeah.
I've gone through times where, in general, not having goals or not having resolutions, and then times where, I have a lot of goals surrounding kind of my daily life, and it looks a lot different. And resolutions are hard just in general, and I think the biggest thing is because they're not specific. Mm-hmm. You have a single line of something you'd like to do, and that's it. There's it's going to take all year to do it, but it's worded in such a way that it sounds like it can be done in one day. Mm-hmm. And so what people do is they see the word and they're like, I can start that, or I can do, even if they realize like, I can't do that in a day, like in their heads, they're like, I'll take care of that later. And so when they say, I want to get in shape, it's like, well, that can happen, and that can be done at any time. Mm-hmm. And so, taking care of the kids, or watching, catching the new, season of whatever on Netflix. Mm-hmm. Why should it be more important than that urgent thing? And, even if that thing isn't important, it is urgent. Mm-hmm. The last couple of years, I've actually been surrounded by a lot of people that are extremely goal-oriented. The business that I'm in real estate, are filled with people that would literally crash and burn if they were not self-motivated. Mm-hmm. Fun fact, I also realized the hard way that due to the nature of it, these same people are also hyper competitive. Did not really think that through. We had a health contest, a health challenge many months ago at an old team I was on. Mm-hmm. And I showed up. One of the things was a quantity of stairs that you climbed. And to make it even for everybody, you had to do the stairs on one of two staircases that were at the office.
Oh, okay.
By the way, the boss later regretted this because we wore out his brand new staircases.
Oh, jeez.
But I showed up. I'm a night owl. And so in my head, it seemed like a genuinely kind of enjoyable experience to kind of go put on an audiobook mm-hmm. and go do some stairs. Mm-hmm. And I show up, and there's four other cars in the parking lot at 11 p.m.
Wow.
I'm like, this is a bunch of BS.
Did these people have families to like go home to?
Yep.
Or?
Yep.
Wow. That's a red
flag. I showed up one day, and one of the daughters was managing the clicker, the counter.
Wow.
Yeah, it was rough. So,
wow.
But yeah, that was just a random lesson, because they have given me a lot of framework and a lot of guidance to consistently having goals around my life and goals to go for. So they've given me a framework, and I wanted to talk about a couple of the things that I've been provided that are definitely not created by me. They've been created by and adapted by many layers of people before me. But I kind of wanted to show them to the audience and show them to you, Bryan. And I'd love to get your take on them.
Absolutely.
So, first off, you kind of heard my take on resolutions, that they're kind of a single sentence thing. That certainly it does kind of encompass the thing that you do need to do during the year, but is worded in the way that, it sounds like you can do it all in one day. Is there anything that you would add, or is there any comment that you have on that?
Yeah, I agree. There's definitely those. I'm just pulling from my own experience here. There's definitely those kinds of resolutions where it's like get in shape, right? Or run a marathon, or
be more social.
Yeah.
Read more, read more.
Yeah.
Learn something new.
Yeah, learn something new every day. That's the worst thing.
In church, we see a lot, like read my scriptures more.
Oh, yeah. Like read all of the standard works.
Yeah.
There's definitely those. The ones that stick out to me the most from my childhood, though, were the ones like read 1,000 pages, or like get straight A's this year, or they were a little more specific, but they're like, some of them were like wild. Like, I think I set a goal for myself to work out for 180 hours in a year.
Nice. That's awesome.
Like, and that's like, first of all, this was many moons ago. I didn't have a smartwatch or a smartphone or a cell phone. And like, really, other than like pen and paper, I had no way of like recording any of that. And so, again, like by the end of January, I had stopped like recording it in any way. and it
Yeah.
just kind of fell by the wayside, and who knows if I even completed it, which defeats the purpose of setting a goal in the first place. I think there you could argue that some goals like that could benefit you from establishing a habit that you can carry on. I would argue that your internal worth and your self-esteem takes a big hit whenever you set a goal and you fail.
Yeah.
So the cost outweighs the benefit, I think. That's just my take on New Year's resolutions and setting goals for myself.
I like it. The point I had, I may actually touch on during one of the kind of the acronyms that we have here. So, resolutions. The couple of the things that make them hard. They are vague. They're not actionable. They're very kind of umbrella, general.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, we make a goal that realistically we have no idea. I'll use I statements. I'd make a resolution that I have no idea how to actually achieve. You take the workout for 180 hours.
Mm-hmm.
As a kid, before these smart devices, realistically, you have no idea how you're going to achieve that. And sure you can write it down, but you've never. That's something you haven't done before.
Mm-hmm.
So on top of setting yourself a resolution to do a thing, you've also committed yourself to do a second thing that you've never done before on a daily basis, that you didn't realize you've committed yourself to.
Right. Yeah.
So I don't want to keep kind of babbling on about that stuff. So the worksheet that I was given, and I've kind of just reworded to, it was given to me in the real estate setting, and I've taken that terminology out. And so it's an acronym. The acronym is SMART. So the words are specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. And we're going to go over each of those. When you're making goals, when I'm making goals, it's actually helpful to kind of establish what part of my life they are affecting, or I'm intending for them to affect. So the different areas that they kind of place a role in, the 5 areas is physical, financial, spiritual or mental, educational, and family. And the objective when you're going through, and for example, your annual goals, the objective is that you have something in each of these categories, preferably more than one. And that puts you into this kind of this goal-oriented mindset, because in every area of your life, I'm being intentional about kind of what I'm working towards. There's not an area of my life that is just sedentary, or just I'm okay with it being right where it's at, just indefinitely. And so the more finite, if you want to, you can get more specific after you've determined that there's one in each of those categories. And then you can determine each of these goals. Are they, first of all, is it an achievement goal, or is it a habit goal? Because if you don't establish in the beginning which of the two it actually is, then I'm setting myself up for disappointment later.
Right.
I will be more forgiving for myself on a habit goal. For example, during the month of December, I had a habit goal set up to be out of bed by 6 a.m. every morning. If that was an achievement goal, then the first time that I messed up, then that goal would be over. I would have failed that goal. Right. So I get to establish which one it is. I get to be more specific on where it lies in my life. Is it spiritual? Is it parental? Is it intellectual? Social? Emotional? Vocational? So something work related. Physical? Avocational? I don't know if I'm saying that word right, but that's like a hobby. Marital? Financial. So that just helps me be a little bit more specific than the other 5. So, is there any intention that you have, Bryan, that you want to put on the cutting board to be spliced apart?
I'm learning now that you and I have different approaches for this year's
okay. Well, tell me your thoughts so far.
So I kind of swung the other way, almost exactly the opposite way, where my childhood was spent setting a lot of goals for myself. I experienced a little bit of burnout with goals, to the point where my later teenage years, into most of my 20s, I kind of subconsciously decided that I was not a really goal-oriented person. That I felt more comfortable pursuing an objective at irregular paces, I guess, that I could determine in whatever time frame I deemed necessary or relevant. I could change my approach to an objective.
Mm-hmm.
I will say, working at the DI, there's a lot of goals set by the company for me as a manager, and it's taken some time, and it's taken a lot of explaining from my supervisor to see the benefit of having these rigorous goals, which is a good thing. And I'm definitely open to setting these SMART goals for myself in the future. But this year, for my New Year's resolutions, I picked 3 things that were really important to me. Kind of, similar to your 5 categories, I had 3. Kind of, so financially, my resolution or my intention for this year is to have a profitable business, and that's it. Like, I don't have any stipulations on that. Purposely was vague about that in an effort to keep my wheels turning as to how I would get that. I've spoken with you about that resolution. Right now, my focus is on building up these podcasts into profitable endeavors, but I'm also open to doing something completely different. Maybe finding some niche thing that I could sell, or some kind of service I could offer, or whatever. I don't know. It's a wild time on the internet to make money, so I'm told.
It certainly is. I actually think we're more in agreement than you might think, Brian.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to present two different really things that take place, at least for me. So the first thing that I realized was, you mentioned for some goals, it all, if people just let them drop, it almost was more unhealthy than if they just hadn't gone for it in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
And I completely agree with that. And I actually think if somebody starts a resolution, makes a goal for themselves, and it's very important. It's not that they quit, because I actually think quitting would be better. I think the worst thing that you can do is fizzle out.
Mm-hmm. I absolutely agree.
Yeah, I think that is bad is also a very toxic word, but
and so is fail, or
yeah.
I get what you're saying, absolutely.
But it is mentally unhealthy to fizzle out on something that you had been intending on doing, because then all I've done is I've trained the brain on what to do next time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you've proven to yourself that you're not capable.
Yes.
Every time you fizzle out, every time you quote unquote fail, or you don't make it, or you don't achieve your resolution, that's just another piece of evidence to yourself that you're not good enough to reach for the things that you want.
Yes, and we're going to be talking about this goals kind of throughout, this year, and it's going to be a standing topic. And so as we go over it more, I'd love to, and we, Bryan, you find, various articles on it, and as you go through your studies in psychology, I'd be interested to see, what various things you find. But I know that there are people that they are just, I think there's a name for it, but they are known for just being good at learning new things. There are people that are very good at just starting new businesses. Like there are people in the world that they are just known for starting businesses and selling them off within the first year.
Mm-hmm.
That's just their thing. And it's been very long time since I've read some of these articles, but their brain is configured because they've done it so many times. Their brain just knows how to kind of accept and kind of take on these new things and finish them to the end, or finish them to whatever they've kind of set forth to do, because that's what they've done every single time. And when you fizzle out on something, that's the neural pathway that your brain is used to, and it's easier to do that the next time.
Yes.
Now, differently, if I start a goal, even if it's small, if I complete that goal, my brain learns the complete emotional experience and the whole process altogether of starting and finishing a goal.
Including the dopamine hit.
Yeah, including the dopamine hit. And it becomes easier to finish the goal next time. And so that's why I think it's so important for, whatever the goal is, even no matter how small it is, making it, being intentional about it, and finishing it is so much more important. And if I have a goal, and I'm going to get into this, I think the other thing is, if it's not an interest of mine anymore, I don't want to do it anymore. So easily, including myself, it's so easy to turn to shame, or just like, for me, like I'll act like it doesn't exist. Yeah, like I'll just act like it's not there anymore. But just confronting it and acknowledging it, and just verbally or to another person saying like, this is I'm no longer working on this, that shuts it off. I'm no longer trying to shamefully, like, it's still it's not like in my brain, kind of in the back of my head, because it is still taking up space in my head when I'm trying to ignore it. And so when I tell somebody else, no, that's no longer a priority, then it's actually not there anymore. And also I've been intentional about it, and I've made a choice to let go instead of letting kind of circumstances control me.
Right. That's what I was just actually going to bring that up, and saying when you quit something, you're instead of fizzling out, there's intention behind the choice to forego pursuit of that goal. That's you using your power, your sovereignty to choose out of that goal, and that's powerful. That's you stepping into your power and owning it.
There's no reason. So a very random example that isn't like not necessarily goal, but as far as commitment and intention related. I know in school early on, I had a family member that, was good at football and good at wrestling, and that was his thing. And so when I came to that same school behind him, I had the same physical build. He just didn't know that I couldn't care less about sports. And he's like, dude, you gotta wrestle. And I was like, no. But he got me on the wrestling team, and I hated that. It was a fun, don't get me wrong, a lot of fun. Enjoyed that. The only other kid in my weight class was like 50 pounds above me in my weight class.
Whoa.
And so it was once, like, I was good until he sat on me, and then it was no longer a fun day.
Yeah, that's
like, it was like fun, and then all of a sudden like super not fun.
It's like bad. It's a bad time.
Yeah. And so it got to I was very tired, and I think go to school, and I think wrestling practice was right after school. So I'd go to wrestling practice, and I would get home, and I would just pass out. And I don't remember doing a single piece of schoolwork during that 3-week period that I was in wrestling. I was like, I don't understand how people do sports. And I had done basketball for a couple of years, but wrestling was a beast. And I remember I was home early one day, and my dad asked me like, what was up? And I was like, oh, I don't wrestle anymore. And he's like, well, I feel like the coach knew him. And I was like, I feel like the coach would have called me. I was like, oh, I haven't told the coach. And he made me go tell the coach, even though I hadn't been in there for a couple of days. And still as an adult, I feel it was very obvious that I was no longer, but he made me go tell the coach that I was quitting. And I still remember just after that day, like, I didn't want to go tell him, but I could actually, that 2.5 hour time that I was getting to go home early, I was still stressed. Like I was still supposed to, quote unquote, be somewhere else. And I was just trying to ignore it, act like it wasn't a thing. And so once I told him, like, like I could actually use that 2.5 hours to do something that I wanted to do. And so I don't know if that kind of makes sense, but that did kind of make an impact on me.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's exactly what we were talking about. You're exerting mental effort to not feel guilty or whatever you felt for quitting wrestling. But then when you addressed it, cleaned the wound and wrapped it up or whatever, then all of a sudden that was gone.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with like choosing out of a resolution. This isn't what I want anymore. I no longer want to run a marathon, or I really don't care about reading 1,000 pages this year. I'm good with like reading one book because I really liked this book and I just kind of want to not read anything because I liked this book so much, or whatever. I'm just trying to pull stuff out of my butt here. It was a really good demonstration of you using your free will, your power, to free yourself up from a goal or commitment that you had previously made.
Yeah. Applying that to, again, at this previous place of work that I was at, everybody was very goal oriented, and we had the opportunity with our boss to, he would also challenge us to be goal oriented at work and also in our personal lives. And so he really expected us to have goals laid out in both areas for the year, and to be accountable to him and to other people at the office on those goals. And a lot of people really didn't look forward to those, and I didn't understand why. And then over the course of the year, I realized that it was a lot of folks were doing it differently than I was, because every time I walked into one of those meetings about once a quarter, my sheet looked wildly different than it did the last time. Because my interests had changed. And so sure, at the beginning of the year, I had set up like, yeah, this is what I'd like to do today. I don't hold myself accountable at all to the person that exists 3 months from now is a completely different person. I have no idea what life experiences that person has. And on a daily basis, like I still have commitments, but like if my feelings or if my attitude has just changed, I'm certainly not gonna keep going for something that I literally no longer care about. And so it became a mixture of, I think telling it to another person was a good way to be accountable and make sure I wasn't just doing it out of fear, that I didn't want to complete this just out of a fear thing. And if it wasn't that, then I could very willingly, there was no fear. And so I didn't have any trouble telling him that I didn't want to do that anymore. I had goals that lined up around, I had a D&D adventure that I wanted to have paired and ready to go for a professional event that I was going to get paid for. And that was supposed to be done, I think, this last August. And the event changed, so obviously that goal changed as well.
Right.
To the point where it just got taken off the sheet because the event was no longer happening, and my own priorities shifted to the point that I no longer had an interest in finishing it just for the sake of finishing it. I had goals. I remember I had goals to do an overnight trip with my motorcycle. I had goals to things related to learning Spanish, which I actually have on this year's. But there were many goals that I didn't complete from last year. But every single time I went in and I verbalized that to somebody else, like these were what my goals were for this, that, or whatever reason. That is not what I want to do right now, and this is where my attention is now. And so being able to like step away from the shame of like changing the goal was actually very empowering, because so much my time could be spent so much more effectively when I understood that I can just switch and be fine with that and not have to spend the month of feeling like ashamed, like, yeah, no, I'm not doing that anymore, or kidding myself and be like, yeah, I just have to make time for it again. And even though in the back of my head, like I don't care about it anymore. And so my experience was in the past, I didn't want to be specific with stuff because I was burned out. And I was fearful of failing because I didn't know how to fail effectively, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
And then also the brain just does what's easiest. And so if I just fail every time, then the brain that's the easiest thing for the brain to do the next time. And so now that I know how to be specific, and I know that there is no shame in changing like changing the parameters literally at any time, with usually one of the only barriers being verbalizing it to another person. Depending on how serious it is, maybe I put up a couple other obstacles, but that's up to me. If, there's been ones that I do put money on the table in some form or another, or I pay for an event in advance. Mm-hmm. That's a good way to do things. Yeah. Pay for a plane ticket in advance.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a big rambling for people. But yeah, when I hear you kind of talk about some of the things you mentioned, a couple of those instances did come to mind for me. So yeah. If you relate to those, then awesome. If you feel it's a little bit different of a situation, then that's the power that you have.
No, I'm right with you on all of that. Yeah, I got sick of seeing the list that I wrote. The first week of January, we always taped them up inside of the cabinet where the cereal was, so we'd see them every day. And yeah, I just by March or April, I had just stopped progressing towards most of them, and just seeing it was just another reminder of all these things that I have to now try to ignore, like you were saying.
Yeah. And you don't get to get rid of the mental energy of it,
right?
At least at that point in time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so that was just frustrating. And so then, me being the mildly stubborn and willful person that I am, you just went the other way entirely, energetically, and just I don't set goals anymore. Goals are stupid.
Yeah. I want to go through some of these specific points in the acronym as we continue through this discussion. And yes. So the acronym of this framework is SMART. And so the first one is specific. And so I'm going to read straight from this form. I hope it's not copyrighted. That'd be super awkward.
That would suck. Be really real bummer for my one resolution.
If your goal is specific, it answers the question, what is the goal exactly? Who else is involved? How will I do it? When will I do it by? And so I do, whenever I have something I'd like to do, it does start with an intention, and that intention doesn't go away. And so the original intention may still be, I want to be healthier, or I want to get in better shape. Mm-hmm. And that gets put up at the top. And then that sentence becomes the experimental sentence that keeps getting modified throughout the process of going through this sheet. Mm-hmm. So the example on this is say, I want to get in better shape. A specific goal would say, on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I will attend a yoga class at X yoga studio at this time. And so actually going through beforehand and deciding, okay, let's find a class, let's put it in, so I don't have to go find a class and determine after the fact how, the mental strain in the middle of the goal of okay, when do I feel like I actually progressed on this goal? That's useless. Mm-hmm. If I want to say I want to be more social, it's very awkward to be okay, have I been social enough today? Have I, have I done the thing?
Right.
Like that. Or I want to read more scriptures. It's okay, sure, if you want to be super safe about it, if you read the scriptures for an hour each day, you can very confidently tell yourself that you've read more scriptures than you have in the past. Mm-hmm. But that's not sustainable for most people.
Right.
And then they continue on it. And on Tuesday and Thursday, I'll hike for 1 hour at, X, canyon. And so they set a schedule, it's set up in advance, and they know what they need to do to achieve it. Mm-hmm. The next one is measurable. Establish concrete criteria for measuring progress toward the attainment of each goal you set. When you measure your progress, you stay on track, reach your target dates, and experience the sense of achievement, that dopamine, that spurs you on to continued, consistent effort, which is necessary to achieve your specific goal.
Sweet, sweet DA.
Yes. So to know if a goal is measurable, ask questions such as, how will I know if I'm in shape? How will I know if I've made progress? What will it look like? How will I feel? Yeah, awkward. And so for this one, I will know I'm on track when I've been consistent with my workout schedule for at least 90 days. I will have a fitness expert measure my heart rate and other measures of fitness and compare where I am when I began this goal and how I'm doing each 90 days, which is a great, involve a secondary thing, bring data into it, mm-hmm. and actually track. That's a great way to bring a very vague goal, put it on paper, and actually give things for you to work on. One of the favorite things in Washington, my trainer over there his favorite thing with some of the equipment they had is you could measure, I think, diameter for like legs or arms or chest.
Yeah.
And it would give a visual kind of on the screen, and it would overlay the previous, like the initial measurement over the current one. And so you could see, like, yes, I understand, like, it doesn't feel like you've made like massive impact, but over the accumulative 90 days, like, this is literally where you were. And when you're looking at, if somebody's trying to get arm strength or get into bodybuilding, and they can literally see like 40% growth over, you know, a next month period. Don't. That's a random. But you can very visually see a change on that sheet. And that's extremely motivating.
Yeah, absolutely.
To see that.
Absolutely.
Especially if you're, I love video games, and if you're somebody that gamifies stuff, something like that is extremely effective.
Lifting and like strength training is a big score game. That was always, I don't know if Kevin felt this way, but in high school, Kevin and I would lift all the time, and it was like the high score wins, right? And so like the bench press and the power cleans and the squats and the curls and everything was like, okay, Kevin just beat me, so Kevin just benched more than I can bench, so I guess I'm hitting the bench harder. And then
yeah, exactly.
And then we do the max out days again, and we both grew a little bit, and now we're tied. And okay, so that's that constant progress measurement. It was super helpful to have. And just generally working out with somebody is way better than just by yourself, for a ton of different reasons, but also for something like this, where if weightlifting or bodybuilding or strength training is a goal of yours, find an accountability partner and make it a game. Who can lift the most reps or weight? Make it suit your goal, but make it a game. I love that.
Yeah, regular check-in, I think, is needed to make sure that it remains a healthy thing. Because I think if it ever, for either person, I think if you start to get into that burnout thing, then the same effect starts to happen where you just, if you see the other person progressing and you've gone into that burnout mentality, then it turns into a very toxic thing. But that's if you're a good person and you see the other person is kind of into that, then a conversation just needs to be had, so that I guess general self-awareness and faith in humanity is required to interact with other people in general.
That's a pretty fair statement there.
Yeah. One of my goals this year is my beginning intention is to read more. That's what I know I wanted to do. I really wasn't, it didn't work for me how much I had dropped over the years, how much I read, because I loved to read when I was a kid. And
not me.
For everybody, I wasn't into the sports, and so the only way I could show off was with those magical AR point starboards.
Oh, no way. You did AR too?
Yeah. And so we had to that was the way that I could show off, and I enjoyed reading. I wasn't happy with how much it had dipped. So my goal initially, read more books. That shifted into read 30 books this year. It's like, okay, that's a fantastic goal. So measurable. The first thing that gets done is it gets broken down. So how many books on a monthly basis does that turn into? It turns into about 2.5. And so I know on a weekly basis, if I'm reading just under a book a week, then I'm pretty good. Usually my broken down goals are actually higher reaching than my annual ones, and so that hopefully, even if I'm dipping on some weeks, I'm going above what my annual becomes. So that's usually what it turns into. So on a weekly basis, if I read just under a book, then I'm fine. So then the next thing I want to establish is like, okay, what am I actually going to read? And so before the year began, I made sure that I had a minimum list of 30 books that I could actually go through. And I wasn't having to make that list and find books as I went. Because that was going to be that mental like strain of like, what's the next thing going to be? Like, I gotta find another book. I'm wasting time. And so if I found other stuff, like, that's cool. I'll add it. Or if I want to read something before something else, like, I couldn't care less. That's fine. But at minimum, I wanted to have a list of something I knew, like, these are all books I already own. I don't have to mess with buying them later. Or if I do need to buy them, I already know when I'm going to buy it. And this is a minimum thing that I know that I can at least read these books and I don't have to put mental strain into it. So, measurable. Some of them are bigger, some of them are smaller, but the main thing was just having that list. The next thing is A, and that is attainable. So after you've defined the goals that are most important to you, your next task is to figure out ways you can make the goals come true. I probably, some of that stuff I probably actually was applicable to this part. So beforehand, I create the attitude, the ability, the skill, and the financial capacity to reach them. You begin seeing opportunity everywhere that takes you closer and closer to attaining your goals. Yeah, some of that stuff was actually for this. So once you make the goal, I get to spend some time figuring what are all the things that are required to make this thing happen. So I need to know what I'm reading. I need to know how long I'm going to read it for. Do I need money to pay for these books? What's involved? Do I need software? Some of the podcasting stuff, I have podcasting goals as well. And I knew for the podcast, some of that involved some software that I didn't yet know. And so that was the software that I learned over the course of New Year's, because I knew and had established already that was required to achieve some of the other stuff that I wanted. And I think I may have mentioned it before, or one of us had. It says your goal is probably realistic if you truly believe that it can be accomplished. Additional ways to know if your goal is realistic is to determine if you have accomplished anything similar in the past, or ask yourself what conditions would have to exist to accomplish this goal. So saying I want to be healthier.
That's completely unrealistic. Yeah. Don't put that on yourself, Jordan.
Have I ever thank you.
Thank you for laughing.
I want to be healthier. It's like, okay, I want to go to the gym every day. It's like, okay, have I ever maintained a habit to go to the gym on an every? But that's the question exactly. I need to ask myself. If I'm not realistic with that, then I'm setting myself up for failure.
Absolutely.
I need to. I'm not saying I need to not make that a goal, but I get to be honest with myself and say, like, okay, this is not something I've done before, and I get to be emotionally like aware of that this is going to be a new experience. I'm probably going to emotionally deal with something that I haven't dealt with before on this end, and knowing that beforehand is probably going to set me up better than otherwise. Financially, if I've lived my whole life going paycheck to paycheck, and I have a goal to have X amount in my savings account, that's going to be weird. I need to acknowledge to myself, like, I've never lived this way before. Like, this is going to be a new experience. And when I feel like this like weird feeling of like, oh, I need to spend, like, I have this much money and here's this thing that I want, like, I need to have already acknowledged beforehand, like, that's like, I'm going to be experiencing things that I haven't experienced before. I think that's a super important part of it.
Yeah. And it's kind of tricky though, too, because I think one thing that I do believe about goals and setting goals is that if you don't set goals, or if you don't have anything you're working towards or stretching for, you're not going to grow, and you're just going to drift and stagnate. And that's not a place that's very fun to be in. Yes. So the realistic component of these goals can be tricky. If you're a person like me who has actively avoided setting goals for your entire adult life. This morning went over some sales goals for my department, and my supervisor looked at me and said, "What do you think?" And I said, "I have absolutely no idea. I've never done this before. I've never been a department manager at a retail store before. I have no idea how to make almost $1 million in a year. I have no idea." So that's it's absolutely a very important part of your goal making. I can't even think of an example.
And I do think that, even if it's something I've never done before, I think the most important thing is just, again, acknowledging that beforehand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, for habitual goals, it's good for me to know, like, am I trying to go back to a state that I was in before, or am I trying to push for something new that I haven't experienced before? That's very important. If it's an achievement goal, the nature of it is I have not gotten to that point in the past.
Right.
Mentally, if I know beforehand I'm going to experience something I haven't before, that sets me up way differently than just going in blind. Because a lot of people, me included, I avoid the uncomfortable, I avoid pain. And so if I haven't acknowledged that pain beforehand, and also acknowledged to myself, like, I'm gonna try to push into that, then as soon as I hit it, then I'm like, oh, this isn't a good experience. Like, I don't like this.
Right.
So the next one is, and actually the last one is timely. So goals must have a specific defined time frame. If you lack a timetable, there will never be urgency. Just as everyone says, again, I want to get in better shape each and every year. So if you want to lose, for example, 10 pounds, when you want to lose it by. Someday will not work, but if you anchor it within a time frame by June 1st, then you've set your unconscious mind into motion to begin working on the goal. So again, for me, that most of that is breaking it down into very, I can't think, like even just losing 10 pounds by June 1st, that doesn't work for me. And so it is even more like, what does that turn into? And so when I was on keto, it was X amount of pounds a week. It was on a weekly basis. Well, and that's just whatever you want to choose. But for me, breaking it down to a weekly chunk of the goal, that's what worked for me. That's what made it urgent enough for me to have it kind of stay in my mind. Anything, and different people work different ways. Some people it works for monthly, some people quarterly. But just for a lot of my goals, breaking it down to a weekly basis, more if it's a habitual goal, obviously, but that's what works. That's what works for me. And so I talk about, for my fitness stuff, it's how am I doing on a weekly basis. For the books, how many books on a weekly basis does that mean? For Spanish, I use kind of a gamified app to learn Spanish, and so it's how many crowns on a weekly basis. That's what turns it into for me. And then I want to do this in a weekly basis, because if I miss a day, like, it's easier for me to make up a day in a week instead of making up a week in a month.
Right.
That's very overwhelming for me.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think for me personally, the timely component was the biggest slayer of my New Year's resolutions. Because it was like, we've talked about it this whole episode, just, I've got all year to do this. Like, I've got all year to get in shape or whatever, I've got all year to do a million push-ups without resting. Yeah. Like, whatever I set for myself, I can't remember, but I've got 12 months. I don't need to sweat it right now. So, I might be a little bit embarrassed to admit this, but the idea that you can set a New Year's resolution to be completed before December 31st is kind of new to me. That's a pretty novel idea, that I could set a New Year's resolution to be done by June.
Gotcha. See that, and but I can totally relate. I didn't even think like, oh, that's not, this and that are not the same thing.
Yeah.
I'm going to go through some of these, and I want like your comments. And it's, especially if they're, even if a lot of this stuff is something that you've heard for the first time, Bryan, I want you to critique these if something comes to mind. So I'm going to go through some of the ones that I have for 2022.
Okay.
The first one was learn DaVinci. I actually went through that. And by the way, don't try to learn a new audio software in one day. I'm going to tell you right now, it's not an enjoyable experience. But I did it in one day, and I took it off the goal list.
Not into it.
Yeah, not into it. So the first one, learn Spanish. So that is actually, for me, that is set up as a habit goal. There's kind of an intention, kind of a not broken down or not thought about a lot, that next year, 2023, it will turn into an achievement goal, where maybe by the end of it, I take like a fluency test or something. But for now, it's just a habitual goal.
Okay.
And some of the questions that are asked. So the working intention is to learn Spanish. Why is this important to me? So I put 2 down. I say, I truly I have a desire to respect kind of the people and cultures around me. And so it's, for me, that has gone a lot to Spanish. I just want to learn Spanish and be able to communicate in that way. And then the other one is I'm selfish, and I know it'll grow my business. So steps needed to continue progressing this goal. So I've just put a couple, and so I know that I need to progress in this app that I'm using. I know I need to find discussion opportunities in the native language, and I know I want to find media that is only in that form, and so podcasts that are only Spanish speaking, or like TV shows that are only Spanish speaking, or audiobooks or something like that, to help kind of more immerse in that. The last thing is the reward, and I think the rewards are one of the more important things of a goal, and for me it's the hardest part, trying to find, because rewards are so often monetary,
right,
and I actually think it's so often kind of harmful for it to be a monetary thing.
Yeah.
I really think I think we as humans, we go after something that affects us. Like, we want some kind of emotional response. We want to feel happy. We want to feel gratified. Like, we want these things. And so just putting something money related on there every time, like I'm going to buy a new suit or something like that. It's very easy, and I would certainly like that. but I think that's almost kind of a cop out.
Yeah.
I think I'm doing myself a disservice by not trying harder to reward myself. So, and then at the bottom are some stuff filled out just to make sure I went through each of the specific: measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely, just to make sure I was kind of hitting some of those points. And so the new one, the intention turned into a SMART goal, is to achieve 10 crowns on Duolingo. That's the app I use every week, and master one course each week. There's kind of a higher, it's gamified, so you can go to like the courses will decay over time, but you can get to like a certain level where they stop decaying and you've like mastered the lesson.
Okay. Yeah.
And so for me, that's very specific, and I know when I've completed my goal. And I achieve that by, during my morning routine, after my journaling, and before I start work, I spend at least 10 minutes a day on the app. And that easily gets me what I want. I'm not going to go into it in depth for the rest of the goals, but I wanted to just go over each of the points. So that's learn Spanish. Next one is read 30 books by the end of the year. I've broken that down again to a weekly basis, and I know kind of in general what books I have on the docket. For work, I'm in real estate, and so I have a goal of closing 24 transactions. And again, I could break that down just logically and say, okay, that's about 2 transactions a month. Perfect. But that wouldn't be very realistic, because realistically what's going to happen is the winter months are going to be slower than the summer months. So it's actually going to look more like a bell curve. And so knowing that in advance is going to save me at least a little bit of anxiety. And so I have that worked into the goal. And there are a couple things, this 24 transactions, there was a lot of time spent on the attainable. There were things like I knew I get to spend a lot of time on the outer edges doing the things I know need to happen for that to actually be possible. There's courses I need to take. There's seminars I need to attend, connections and business building things that I need to do to actually achieve that.
Nice. That sounds like a pretty deep one. Like you went pretty deep on that one.
Yes. The 24 transactions actually covers kind of there's a lot of kind of smaller work goals within that. But as an agent, usually life is all consumed by like, how many transactions do I have?
Right. Yeah, I get that.
Because that's the paycheck.
Right.
So usually a lot of companies, more transactions usually means more money later. And so having more transactions that you can show to different companies and different entities makes things even easier to get more success down the road. And so people in the industry, they want to work with successful people. And so when you can show that you're successful, then it's easier to, so it's a layered effect. And so Yeah. The next one is actually a really good example on why I'm grateful to have goals. So the one that I have right now in the physical category is to run a 10K by the end of quarter. COVID actually kind of messed this up. So I had at the end of quarter one, and now we're saying by May.
Nice.
But the original goal months ago was to run a 5K by the end of quarter one of 2022. I had that goal. I wrote it down. This was when I was still at my other team.
Right.
Presented it to my boss, kind of went through all the stuff, went through the attainable things. I knew I had shin splints. I had to work on those. I needed running shoes. I needed to actually, I had never run that long without stopping in the past. So there were a bunch of things I knew I needed to do. I broke it all down and kind of had like an amount, a time that I wanted to shave off each week. And with all that, super intentional, was actually very motivating. Instead of finishing it in March, I finished it and I ran a 5K in under 40 minutes. And I talked about it on the show, I think.
Yeah.
I did it in December.
Nice.
Much faster than I had intended. And so that's super cool. I also get to go in and challenge myself like, okay, what do I want to do now? Do I want to push myself more? And not the question like, what should I do? That's not a healthy question.
Don't shit on yourself.
The question is, what do I want to do? What do I, what is truly like, not what do other people want me to do? Not like, what does the boss expect of me now that I've completed this metric faster than they, than they expected? Like, what do I want to do? And what I wanted to do was I think a 10K is good. I put it a little bit farther out, but I felt good about it. So we're going to burn through just the rest of them. So I go through the full list. So I have X amount that I want to save for savings and investment funds and a down payment for a house.
Nice.
I want to write 100,000 words in World Anvil.
I like that one.
Yeah. So on a weekly basis, I have an amount of words that I want to write into my world building software. And it's very motivating. It is very stressful. But usually what happens is it's the most annoying for the first 30 seconds. And then usually I write way more than the minimum by the time I'm done. Because once you get rolling on something creative like that, then it's usually easy to keep going. So.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I am excited for that one because I get to benefit directly from that one.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. These one shots have been adding a lot into them. So it's been good. Release 24 episodes of The Quality Varies. So basically just maintain our release schedule that we have.
Nice.
I think it's been going great. It's been emotionally excellent to make it when we made the schedule and we made it more consistent. Split D&D into a separate podcast, and then I have another podcast related one that we won't go into just this moment. And then there is just some real estate education, boring stuff that I have in there.
Yawn.
Speak to my grandmother weekly because I need that in my goal sheet or else I forget to do it.
That's a good goal, man. I like that one.
And then church related, we've already discussed kind of our faith. And so it's important to me to attend the temple once a month. And I have some things kind of in there and accountability partners so that hopefully does not kind of lower itself on kind of the totem pole. So those are the goals. And I say that to, give examples to people on kind of all the different areas that, things can look like. Having an intention and living a little bit more intentionally can show up anywhere. Living intentionally can show up in D&D with this World Anvil. It doesn't just have to be with the big adult, official work stuff, boring stuff.
Ugh. Yuck.
So, yeah. And a lot of these goals, the podcast stuff, that's not just an annual thing. That has a date. Yeah. That has a date set to it that I would like to complete it and then take it off the list so that I don't have as many goals for the rest of the year.
Yeah, there you go. See, that's why didn't I think of that before? That sounds like a great idea.
So, and for people do make just quarterly goals, and they just and it just feels better for them for the entirety of the scope to be shorter. Like for me, I break it down to be a weekly basis, and that works for me.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, you know your own mind. Everybody knows their own mind, and so you know, say something to yourself or put it down on paper, and then just see how it feels.
Wow.
That was a lot of me talking at one time. Brian, what thoughts do you have kind of as going through those?
I love it. I love it all. Thank you for teaching me about goals. I remember in high school I took a financial literacy class where we talked about SMART goals. So I remembered the acronym from way back when, but this was a very helpful, not even a refresher course. It was very helpful for me to actually see it applied onto somebody's goals. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely. Are you ready for the? Sorry, I had a screen over the left half of Audacity, and for a second I thought I wasn't recording. I was about to be pissed.
Yeah, me too.
All right. Are you? So the last point I have is actually not at all to do with kind of this was all kind of from one mentor, and there is one other thing that I've added onto it.
Okay.
So in my head, so I have goals.
Yes.
With each of those goals, I've attached an affirmation, and there's some. What I would suggest to people is goals do need regular review, and so as part of this, I set aside a time for myself. There's a certain time on Sunday that I go in and and for the next week I schedule blocks where I intend to progress these different goals, and that's where a lot of the power comes on being able to make dents on what these annual goals would have been otherwise. And really helps take it away from just being a New Year's resolution. So set aside time during the week to schedule out when you're going to be working on these. During that time, so I have goals, and in each of these goals, I have affirmations attached to them. So for the 10K one, I am a capable. I think I said I'm a capable, agile something man.
Nice.
And there's an affirmation, and I say that to myself every time I see it. If I think we've talked about affirmations before, but there's power there. The last thing is kind of disconnected from all the goals. At the top of the sheet, I have a theme, and the theme I stole from another couple content creators, but it doesn't have anything else attached to it. There's nothing else written down. It's literally just something that I like to keep in mind when I'm making choices. I just gotta, does this choice line up with the theme that I have for this year? So I have these goals, and then the theme for the year, for me, as an example, is the year of transformation.
Nice.
And so when I have these goals and I work on them, but then whatever's going on in life, when there's a choice in front of me, if I would like to, I get to challenge myself. Like, is this an opportunity to transform?
I like that.
Yeah, and I get to look at kind of what's in front of me, and I get to, I just get to be a little bit aware, and I get to ask myself, and this is what this is what I'd like to look back on at the end of the year and kind of see I've made some, maybe not even, I don't write it down, so maybe not even know like what specific choices I've made, but just see myself at the end of the year and know like, yeah, I obviously thought about it during the year. So I do think there is time, and I do value those places where writing down less and just, keeping it in mind, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. That was kind of my stance when I made mine.
Yeah. There's no personal research or actual research that I know. I don't know anything about how well that works. I don't know how well a lot of this stuff works, but yeah, those are some of the things on my end. In the audience, if anybody has different stuff or anything they'd like to share on goals, if anybody would like to share a spectacular fail that they've already had in one of their New Year's resolutions,
oh, I so want to hear it.
I think that'd be awesome.
Did you make it past January 4th? That's what I want to know. How many of your resolutions did you stay up on January 5th and beyond?
And maybe over the course of the year, I'm going to check in on my goals. Anything that, Bryan, you choose to make up, maybe we'll check in on those. We'll and we'd love to hear, any feedback from the audience. I do truly think it does. In the past, if somebody told me like, yo, go make like 12 annual goals, I'm like, dude, go stuff it.
Yeah,
like,
right.
I'm not gonna go do that.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, that's a lot. It's aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
It's a big shift in somebody's life. But I deeply appreciate it. It's it's just cool to see, and it's certainly cool to see. I mean, other people that you see are obviously just like taking it by the reins and going with it.
Mm-hmm.
You just see their life just start to shift much faster than it would have otherwise. So
Yeah.
I won't keep babbling on, but that was enjoyable to talk about myself. I hope some people gain something from it.
I think somebody will. I think you did a great job teaching us about setting up some goals for yourself and doing it in a healthy way where it feels like my experience of your goals is that you're reaching for yourself. You're trying to stretch the boundaries of what you've known or what you've done in the past, but underneath it all, there's a feeling of self-care. Like you're doing this for yourself and not just for the achievement of running a 10K, but because I think that you know that running a 10K will bring you some satisfaction, and that's awesome, and I really admire you for that, and I'm excited to keep up on our goals this year and be accountable to them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is good to really bring to the head when people are thinking about making theirs, is that self-care really that should be the main reason.
Yes. We're not here to show off.
Use the word, yeah.
Even though I really am, but
I think a lot of us are, but when we're making goals, and I don't want to use the word should, but when we're making goals, self-care is really what it's, whether we think we want it or not, that's what we're going for. Mm-hmm. We're just trying to feel better.
Right. Exactly.
So cool, guys. I don't know what we got next time, but it's certainly not D&D on this show.
Certainly not, which is exciting, I think. Anyway, thanks for listening, and remember, don't believe anything we say.